Okay, so now that we know how to create some basic shapes, let's go ahead and add text to our options. So right now I just have your basic kind of your Facebook social media graphic size. I'm going to go ahead and add a new layer. I'm going to call this text. I'm going to go to our tools panel and go down to this T, which is basically all your text options. I'm going to highlight the default. And I'm just going to type in, here we go. That's going to be our sample text. I have green highlighted. I have no clue why. If you want to edit any of the text options, here's kind of your options panel for text. Let's say I want to have this be really thin. I got a lot of different weight options here. I can do really thick, do really thin. Let's do it really thick. It'll show up better. And that green is nauseating. So let's go ahead and shift that. Let's make it a nice blue. There's a nice light blue. We can make it darker, kind of shift it around to what we want. Let's do that. Okay. And the great thing about text, if I want to make it bigger or smaller, you know, we have this, see this move, what we were doing with our shapes. This move tool, it'll allow me to adjust it up and down. But see, that looks really stretched if I do it manually. So I'm going to do Control Z and go back. I'm going to do my old trick and hold down the Shift button, and I'm able to scale this perfectly. So if I want to ever make something bigger or smaller, I can double click my text layer to edit it. Double click. And I can do it manually, so I can make it really small or really big. Or I can hold down my Shift button on my Move tool and transform it to be bigger or smaller very quickly by just doing that. Okay, so I'm going to put this in the center, press Enter. And so anytime I want to edit my text, so let's say I have some other layers here, and I want to go back to my text layer. So you just highlight your text layer, you just double click it, and notice how this layer style thing opened up. Let's go ahead and cancel that. If you double click on this empty area right here, it's going to open up layer options for you. That's great. We can get to that later, but that's not what I really want to do. If I double click over the actual name, I get to edit the name. So I'm going to edit name here. And if I double click on this option, I'm actually going to highlight the text. So that's very tricky. It's very complicated, but once you go over it over again, you'll get very used to all these options. So you'll notice if you'll double click, you wanted to double click you wanted to edit the text, but you accidentally double clicked here and a layer panel came up. Just cancel and go back and double click on the actual T right here to change text here. So I want to make this multiple colors. I'm going to go ahead and double click, make sure it's highlighted. And I'm actually go back and I just want to highlight here. I want to make this red. So I'm highlighting just this section. I'm going to go back up here and I'm going to make it red. So now we can kind of change multiple things. And let's say I want to make change skinny, just for the sake of showing you guys. Let's make this thin. And okay, so now I want to make this two levels. So this is just like editing a Word document at this point. I can press Enter. It's going to become two lines. And I just noticed these are really close together, these lines. There's not a lot of spacing. Let's go ahead and double click this. And there's two really important windows to call out here. Let's go ahead and make sure I have them visible. One of them is paragraph. This is great for text editing, and another one is character. So I just called out my paragraph and character because that's if you're doing any kind of text work, those are two windows you definitely want to have open. So let me go ahead and select my layer, double click my text, I highlighted it. I want to increase the spacing between these two lines I created. Let's go ahead and create a third one so you can really see what's going on here. There's not a lot of spacing between the lines. So I'm going to have an entire font section to kind of go over this in more detail. But I am in my character window, and right here is the spacing between the lines. So I'm just going to increase that to 72. and you'll notice it's slowly increasing it. I don't have an option outside of 72, no problem. You can type in a manual option. I want to do 222 to make sure I have enough space between those texts. So if there's not an option beyond it, type in your own. So 222, enter. That's too much between the two, but we're getting there. So let's try 111, because that's easy to type in. So now I've changed kind of the space in between the different lines. Okay, so you can also change a lot of other different options in the character panel. You can change the amount of kerning between the text, which is the amount of space between lettering. So let's say I want to make this really wide, lots of space between the letter characters. I'm going to highlight just this, and I'm going to go down right below the spacing between the lines is something called kerning or tracking. So I'm going to make this, you can actually have, if you do a negative option, it'll close the spacing more. If I do a wider option, it's going to make a lot of space between the characters, which can have a desired effect. I'm going to highlight text and do the same thing. And I'm going to highlight here and do the opposite, maybe do a negative, make that really tight just to show you. And as always, if you don't have the option available to you, so let's say 200 is the most it'll go, manually type it in, let's do 800. So when you do like logo design and other kind of typography, when you're doing a headline, sometimes having a lot of space in between the text can have a nice desired high-end effect. So that's kind of where that comes into play. So this is just one big item. If we can always separate and have different, a lot of times I like to have power over each one of these, so change text in here instead of all being in one box. I like to have them be separate elements. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to double click this. I'm going to delete these bottom two sentences, and now we just have change. Oops. I'm just going to create a new layer. I love doing lots of different layers. It gives me more power and control. I'm going to do text box 2, and I'm going to go to my text, and I'm going to type in second line. So it's doing the same style as I just did change, didn't it? And I'm just holding down shift. I'm going to kind of do this here real quick. So now what's great is this is a separate layer and this is a separate layer. So now I have complete control over these in separate ways, which is really nice because I can treat this as a headline and I can treat this as maybe a call to action or a website. So I can do a website. And I don't want as much space between the characters, so I'll just go back here. Let's change it to 0. And I want to make it bolder, so I'm going to go up here and kind of mess with our font a little bit. Change the color. And you can kind of start seeing some elements come together. I'm holding down shift. Make this bigger and smaller. It's much easier to do it this way than it is to double click this and continually change the size, which is right here, of the text manually. Now that's just cumbersome. So I like to take your move tool, hold down shift, oops, hold down shift and just make it bigger like this. So there's just kind of your simple font introduction. We'll go in more detail in the next video.